I am Kara Thompson, 32, and I have always been the family disappointment. Tonight, sitting at my parents' mahogany dining table, I feel the familiar tension in the air. My mother Eleanor clears her throat dramatically. "We are cutting you off completely," she announces, her voice sharp as glass. My father Thomas nods, while my siblings Rebecca and Andrew study their plates. Just as my world crumbles, my phone rings. It is Madison, my assistant. "Ms. Kara, your company stock just hit $100 million. The table goes silent. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I went from family outcast to CEO. Trust me, this story has twists you will not believe. Growing up in the Thompson family meant growing up with expectations. Not the normal kind that most families have, like getting good grades or being home by curfew. The Thompson expectations came with over 200 years of Boston financial history and a family name that opened doors throughout New England. My father, Thomas Thompson III, ran Thompson Financial Group, the investment firm his grandfather had established. Our family lived in a sprawling colonial home in Beacon Hill that had been in the family for generations. The walls were lined with portraits of stern-looking Thompson patriarchs who had all followed the same path: Exeter Academy, Harvard Business School, Thompson Financial Group. "The Thompsons have finance in our blood," my father would often say during dinner, looking pointedly at me as I pushed food around on my plate. From an early age, it was clear I was different. While my siblings Rebecca and Andrew could sit through Sunday dinners discussing market trends with my father, I was designing websites for fun and taking apart computers to see how they worked. "She is just going through a phase," my mother would say whenever I showed her my latest coding project instead of the finance books she kept leaving in my room. The only person who seemed to understand me was my grandfather Harold. Unlike the rest of the family, Grandpa Harold had a spark of creativity that the financial world had never fully extinguished. During family gatherings, while everyone else networked with Boston elite, he would sneak away to his study where he would show me his collection of early computers and tell me stories about technology pioneers. "You remind me of myself when I was young," he told me once, "before I let your grandmother and the family business change my course." When it came time for college, I followed family tradition by attending Harvard. But I chose computer science instead of business or finance. My father was furious. "Computer science? What kind of career is that for a Thompson?" he demanded when I told him my decision. "You will end up working for someone else instead of building the family legacy." My mother, Eleanor, was initially more supportive. She had always been the diplomatic one, smoothing over tensions in the family. But even her patience with my unconventional choices began to wear thin over time. "Darling, your father only wants what is best for you," she would say, her hand on my arm. The family business provides security that these tech startups simply do not have. Meanwhile, my siblings followed the prescribed Thompson path perfectly. Rebecca, 2 years older than me, graduated from Harvard Business School with honors and immediately took a vice president position at Thompson Financial. Andrew, my younger brother by 3 years, studied economics and was already being groomed to eventually take over the firm from our father. During my sophomore year at Harvard, I started my first small tech venture, a simple app that helped students coordinate study groups. It was nothing revolutionary, but it gained popularity on campus and even attracted attention from a few small investors. "This could actually be something," I told my parents excitedly over Thanksgiving break. "That is nice, dear," my mother said dismissively. "But remember, these little projects will not sustain you like a real career would." The final semester of my senior year, my grandfather Harold passed away. The family gathered for the funeral, all dressed in expensive black attire, presenting the united front that Thompsons were expected to show the world. At the reading of the will, everyone was shocked when I was left a separate inheritance of $50,000. For Kara, the lawyer read from Grandpa Harold's will, who has the courage to forge her own path. "Use this to start that business you have been talking about." The rest of the family exchanged looks. $50,000 was a modest sum by Thompson standards, but the message behind it was clear. Grandpa Harold had believed in me when no one else in the family did. That small inheritance would become the seed that changed everything, though at the time, I had no idea just how much. The day after graduation, while my classmates celebrated with family trips to Europe or started prestigious jobs at consulting firms, I used my grandfather's inheritance to rent a tiny office space in Cambridge and officially incorporated my company, HealthSync. The idea had come to me after witnessing my grandfather's frustrating experience navigating the healthcare system during his final illness. Communication between doctors, specialists, and patients was fragmented and inefficient. My vision was to create a platform that would bridge those gaps, allowing seamless communication between healthcare providers and patients. When I announced my plans at Sunday dinner, the reaction was exactly what I expected. "How cute," Rebecca said with a condescending smile. "My little sister has a little project." "How long do you think you will stick with this before you come to your senses?" my father asked, not looking up from cutting his steak. "I give it 6 months," Andrew added with a smirk. My mother at least attempted diplomacy. "Darling, we all go through these phases of wanting to prove ourselves. When you are ready for a real position at Thompson Financial, your father will make room for you." The first few months were harder than I had anticipated. I quickly learned that $50,000 did not go far when starting a tech company. I moved out of my comfortable apartment into a studio the size of my old walk-in closet to save on rent. Ramen noodles became my primary food group. I worked 18-hour days coding the initial platform myself to save money. The breakthrough came at a healthcare tech conference in San Francisco, where I had scraped together enough money to rent the smallest possible booth. Most attendees walked right past. But Michael Larson, a software engineer with experience in healthcare systems, stopped to listen to my pitch. "This interface is clunky as hell," he said bluntly after I demonstrated the prototype. "But the core concept is brilliant." By the end of the conference, Michael had agreed to come on as a business partner, bringing his technical expertise and industry connections. More importantly, he introduced me to Robert Wilson, a veteran healthcare administrator turned angel investor who became our first significant backer. "I have been waiting 20 years for someone to solve this exact problem," Robert told me after our pitch meeting. "The industry is ready for disruption, and your approach is exactly what is needed." With Robert's initial investment of $200,000, we could finally afford proper development resources and a small team. But even as HealthSync began to take shape, my family remained dismissive. When I missed a cousin's wedding because we were in the middle of a critical development sprint, my mother called me in tears. "Family comes first, Kara. Always. This business obsession is unhealthy." At Thanksgiving, my father cornered me in the kitchen. "I have connections at Boston General who tell me your little program has serious flaws. Why not come work for the family firm where you can learn how a real business operates?" Even when we landed our first client, a small primary care practice in Cambridge, my family found ways to minimize the achievement. "It is sweet that they are giving you a chance," Rebecca said. "Probably a tax write-off for them." The only constant support came from my best friend Stephanie, who had stuck by me since our undergraduate days. She listened to my frustrations during our weekly coffee meetups and never once suggested I give up. "Your family cannot see it yet, but you are building something important," she would remind me. "Their approval is not worth sacrificing your vision." Our first real funding round came almost a year into the business. It was modest by industry standards, just $800,000. But it gave us breathing room to refine the product and begin proper marketing efforts. I called my parents, hoping they might finally see that HealthSync was more than a post-college hobby. "That is nice, dear," my mother said. "But investment money is not real revenue. Call us when you have actual profits." The real sting came at Rebecca's wedding later that month. As I stood in my bridesmaid dress at the reception, I overheard my father talking to a family friend. "No, Kara is still playing with her computer program," he said with a laugh. "We are giving her space to get it out of her system before she joins the real world." I felt like an outsider in my own family. The black sheep who had rejected generational wealth and security for an uncertain path. But even then, something inside me knew I could not abandon HealthSync to please them. The company was becoming an extension of myself, the first thing I had ever created that felt truly meaningful. Later that night, as I watched my perfectly coiffed family members dancing and celebrating Rebecca's perfect union with a banking executive from a family that rivaled ours in prestige, I made a silent promise to myself. I would make HealthSync succeed, with or without their support or understanding. What I did not realize then was how much that promise would cost me. Not just professionally, but personally as well. As HealthSync began to gain traction, my personal life started to unravel. Daniel and I had been dating for almost 2 years, having met at a friend's housewarming party shortly after I started the company. Initially, he had been supportive of my entrepreneurial ambitions, even finding it exciting to date a tech founder, as he called me. My girlfriend is going to be the next big thing in healthcare tech, he would proudly tell his friends. But as months passed and HealthSync demanded more of my time, Daniel's enthusiasm waned. Our date nights were constantly interrupted by urgent calls from developers or potential clients. Weekends that should have been spent exploring Boston together were instead spent hunched over my laptop at the office. "When does it end, Kara?" Daniel asked one night after I canceled our dinner reservations for the 3rd time that month. "When will this company stop consuming every minute of your life?" "It is just the startup phase," I assured him. "Once we get past these critical milestones, things will calm down." But we both knew I was lying. The truth was, I could not imagine stepping away from HealthSync, even for a night. The company had become my identity, my purpose. The breaking point came on Daniel's birthday. I had promised him an uninterrupted evening at his favorite restaurant. 10 minutes after we were seated, my phone rang. It was Michael, my business partner, calling about a server crash affecting our largest client. "I have to take this," I said, already standing up from the table. Daniel looked at me with resignation in his eyes. "No, you do not have to take it. You want to take it? There is a difference." 3 hours later, after resolving the crisis remotely from the restaurant's lobby, I returned to find Daniel had paid the bill and left. The text message on my phone was simple: "I cannot compete with your company. Call me when you figure out your priorities." We officially broke up a week later. Daniel wanted an ultimatum to work, but I knew in my heart that if forced to choose between him and HealthSync, the company would win. It had to. The holidays that year were particularly lonely. I declined the family Thanksgiving gathering, using work as an excuse. But the truth was I could not bear another dinner of subtle digs and dismissive comments about my career choice. Instead, I spent the day alone in the office, working on a new feature for the platform while eating takeout turkey from a nearby diner. Christmas was unavoidable, however. The Thompson family Christmas was a 3-day affair at my parents' home, complete with formal dinners and appearances at elite social events. This year, my mother had made attendance mandatory. "Your presence is not optional, Kara," she said firmly over the phone. "Your monthly allowance depends on your participation in family obligations." I had been trying to keep it a secret from my business partners, but despite HealthSync's growing client base, we were still not profitable enough for me to support myself completely. My parents still covered my health insurance and contributed to my rent, a fact they never let me forget. At the Christmas Eve dinner, my father raised his glass in a toast to Andrew, who had just been promoted to senior investment strategist at Thompson Financial. "To continuing the Thompson legacy of excellence in finance," he said proudly, his eyes deliberately avoiding me. Later that evening, as we sat by the fire opening presents, my mother handed me a book, Psychological Perspective on Business Obsession and Family Rejection. "The family therapist recommended this," she said with false sweetness. "She thinks it might help you understand your unhealthy fixation on this company instead of embracing your family heritage." I returned to work after the holidays more determined than ever to make HealthSync successful enough that I would never again be financially dependent on my family. A breakthrough came in February when our development team completed a new feature that allowed real-time coordination between hospital departments for patient transfers, a notorious pain point in healthcare. We presented the innovation at the New England Healthcare Systems Conference, where it generated significant buzz. Several regional healthcare networks expressed interest, and for the first time, serious investors began calling us instead of the other way around. None of my family attended the conference presentation, despite my invitations. The only person from my personal life who showed up was Stephanie, who sat in the front row beaming with pride. "They are missing out," she told me afterward. "Not just on your success, but on who you are becoming." The person I was becoming included Madison, my newly hired executive assistant who quickly proved herself indispensable. With sharp efficiency and unwavering loyalty, Madison handled everything from scheduling to office management, freeing me to focus on strategic growth. "Your family still does not understand what you are building, do they?" Madison asked one day after overhearing a tense phone call with my mother. "They think I am playing business," I admitted. 3 years in, and they still talk about when I will give up and join the family firm. Madison looked thoughtful. "Sometimes people cannot see your value until strangers do." Her words proved prophetic. A month later, Northeastern Memorial, one of Boston's largest healthcare providers, signed a contract to implement HealthSync across their entire system. The deal was worth over $1 million annually and instantly transformed our company's financial outlook. For the first time, I felt vindication. This was not just a hobby or a phase. HealthSync was becoming a legitimate player in healthcare technology, whether my family recognized it or not. The Northeastern Memorial contract changed everything for HealthSync. Suddenly we needed to scale rapidly, hire more developers, expand our server capacity, and professionalize every aspect of our operation. Madison was promoted from executive assistant to operations director, a role she embraced with characteristic efficiency. Our valuation jumped to $10 million after a successful series of funding round. Tech blogs began writing about us as one of Boston's healthcare startups to watch, and recruitment became easier as talented people sought to join our growing team. For the first time, I was drawing a real salary from the company, enough to finally achieve financial independence from my family. I moved to a new apartment in Cambridge, closer to our office, and politely declined my mother's offer to continue subsidizing my rent. "Are you sure that is wise?" she asked, concern in her voice. Startup success can be so fleeting. But I was sure. HealthSync was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. The validation I had sought for years was finally happening, though not from the sources I had originally hoped for. Then came the call that changed everything. My mother's voice was shaking when she told me my father had collapsed during a meeting and been rushed to Massachusetts General Hospital. "They think it might be his heart," she said, panic evident in her usually controlled tone. "You need to come now." I dropped everything and raced to the hospital, my mind a whirlwind of fear and regret. Despite our differences, he was still my father. The thought of losing him before we had resolved our issues was unbearable. The hospital was a chaos of beeping machines and hurried medical staff. My mother sat rigidly in the waiting room, with Rebecca and Andrew flanking her like sentinels. When she saw me, her expression hardened. "Nice of you to finally make time for family," she said, her voice brittle. "I came as soon as you called," I responded, hurt by the accusation. "This is what happens," Rebecca interjected. "The stress of worrying about you and your precarious choices. You never think about how your decisions affect others." I bit back a defensive response, recognizing that fear was driving their hostility. Instead, I sat quietly, waiting for news about my father's condition. The diagnosis eventually came, not a heart attack, but severe arrhythmia brought on by stress. The doctor prescribed medication and rest, along with lifestyle changes to reduce anxiety. As my father recovered in the hospital, I noticed the disorganization in his care. Different specialists visited at random times. Medications were occasionally delayed, and information was not flowing properly between departments. It was exactly the problem HealthSync was designed to solve. Without mentioning it to my family, I contacted the hospital administration and arranged for a pilot implementation of our platform specifically for my father's case. The results were immediate. His care became more coordinated. Communication improved, and even the nurses commented on the difference. When my father was discharged, the attending physician pulled me aside. "Whatever system you implemented made a significant difference," he said. "We are interested in discussing a wider rollout." I felt a moment of vindication, but it was short-lived. When I tried to explain to my family how HealthSync had helped improve father's care, they dismissed it immediately. He recovered because of the excellent doctors and his strong constitution. My mother insisted. Not because of some computer program. My father's health crisis had briefly united us in concern, but as he recovered, the old tensions quickly resurfaced. If anything, my family seemed to blame me more than ever, suggesting that my career choice had contributed to stress. Meanwhile, HealthSync faced a major manufacturing challenge. Our hardware partner for medical facility installations was experiencing quality control issues that threatened to derail our contract with Northeastern Memorial. For 2 weeks straight, I worked 20-hour days, flying between Boston and our manufacturer in Chicago, desperately trying to resolve the issues before they impacted our clients. The crisis coincided with Thanksgiving, which I missed entirely. My mother left a scathing voicemail. "I suppose we should be grateful you are still alive, since you cannot be bothered to call, let alone visit your recovering father." I finally resolved the manufacturing issues by finding a new production partner, but the effort left me exhausted and emotionally drained. The constant push-pull between family obligations and business responsibilities was taking its toll. By the time my mother's birthday arrived in December, I was running on fumes. I arrived at the exclusive restaurant where the family was celebrating, armed with an expensive gift and rehearsed pleasantries. But the tension was palpable from the moment I sat down. "Your brother closed a $20 million account today," my father announced, pointedly looking at me, "bringing real value to the family business." "That is wonderful, Andrew," I said sincerely, trying to keep the peace. "Not all of us have the luxury of playing entrepreneur," Rebecca added. "Some of us take our family responsibilities seriously." The dinner devolved from there, with thinly veiled criticisms about my choices, my appearance, working too hard to eat properly, and my perpetual single status since Daniel. When I tried to share news about HealthSync's growing success, my father cut me off. "Kara, business talk is for genuine businesses, not hobby projects that drain family resources and energy." I left the dinner early, tears stinging my eyes as I waited for an Uber outside the restaurant. My phone buzzed with a text from Andrew. "Sorry about tonight. They are harsh because they worry. In my own way, I admire what you are building." It was the first genuine support I had received from any family member in years, but it came privately, hidden from our parents. Even in his support, Andrew was unwilling to publicly break ranks with the Thompson family united front. I returned to my apartment that night feeling more isolated than ever. Caught between two worlds and fully belonging to neither. Something would have to give. I just did not realize how soon that breaking point would come. 3 weeks after the disastrous birthday dinner, I received a formal invitation delivered to my office. Engraved on heavy cream stationery with the Thompson family crest was an invitation to dinner at my parents' home, with a handwritten note from my mother, important family discussion to follow. Attendance mandatory. Madison handed me the envelope with raised eyebrows. "Looks serious." "Thompson family serious," I confirmed, running my finger over the embossed lettering. "This means a formal family meeting." In Thompson tradition, important family decisions were always preceded by a formal dinner, followed by a gathering in my father's study. It was where my grandfather had announced his retirement, where college acceptances were celebrated, and where family disappointments were addressed. Despite the dread pooling in my stomach, a small part of me wondered if this might finally be a reconciliation. Perhaps my parents had seen the growing success of HealthSync and were ready to acknowledge my path. With that hope flickering, I decided to prepare a brief presentation about the company's growth and future projections. "They must be impressed with how far you have come," Madison suggested as she helped me compile the latest metrics. "Your valuation has increased 300% in just 18 months. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully in a conservative black dress and pearls, the unofficial Thompson family uniform for important occasions. I even wore my hair in the smooth chignon my mother always preferred over my usual casual style. As I pulled up to the familiar Beacon Hill mansion, lights blazed from every window. The house where I had grown up still inspired a mixture of comfort and anxiety, the physical embodiment of both belonging and rejection. Franklin, the family butler who had known me since childhood, opened the door with his usual formality, though I caught a flash of sympathy in his eyes as he took my coat. "The family is in the drawing room, Miss Kara," he said quietly. I found them arranged like a tableau, my father standing by the fireplace, tumbler of scotch in hand, my mother perched on the edge of the silk brocade sofa, Rebecca and Andrew in matching armchairs, both looking uncomfortable. "Kara," my mother said, rising to kiss my cheek. "You look appropriate for once." Dinner was a stilted affair of small talk and loaded silences. The tension was so thick I could barely swallow the expertly prepared salmon. Only Andrew made genuine efforts at conversation, asking about my new office space and recent industry conferences. When dessert had been cleared away, my father stood and straightened his tie. "Let us continue this discussion in my study," he announced, using the exact phrasing that had preceded every significant family decision in my memory. The study was unchanged from my childhood, leather-bound books lining the walls, the massive mahogany desk that had belonged to my great-grandfather, and the arrangement of leather chairs where family members sat in a loose semicircle facing my father's imposing desk chair. As we settled into our usual positions, I noticed a folder on the desk with my name written on it in my father's precise handwriting. My heart sank. This was not going to be the reconciliation I had hoped for. My father did not sit immediately. Instead, he stood behind his desk, hands clasped behind his back in his business posture. "Kara," he began, his voice formal and detached, "your mother and I have given this considerable thought. For the past 4 years, we have supported your experiment with considerable financial resources. Your apartment, your health insurance, the occasional supplements to your living expenses. We did this because we believed you would eventually come to your senses." My mother interjected, her voice gentle but firm. "We thought it was a phase. Something you needed to get out of your system before taking your rightful place in the family business. It has become clear," my father continued, "that you have no intention of honoring your family obligations. Therefore, we have made a decision." He opened the folder and removed several documents. "Effective immediately. We are cutting you off completely. No more financial support of any kind. Your health insurance will be discontinued at the end of the month. The subsidies for your apartment will cease. You are on your own, as you seem so determined to be." I sat frozen, even though I had suspected this might be coming. The finality of it, delivered in my father's boardroom tone, hit harder than I had anticipated. "If your little healthcare project fails, as statistics suggest it will," my father continued, "you will be welcome to join Thompson Financial in an entry-level position, the same as any other applicant with your qualifications." Rebecca was examining her manicure, avoiding eye contact. Andrew looked pained but remained silent. "Kara," my mother added, tears glistening in her eyes, "this is breaking my heart. You have torn this family apart with your stubborn refusal to accept your heritage. This is tough love, because nothing else has worked." I opened my mouth to respond, but at that exact moment, my phone rang. I would normally have silenced it immediately, the Thompson family rules about technology during formal meetings being extremely strict. But I glimpsed Madison's name on the screen and something made me answer. "I am sorry, I have to take this," I said, standing up. My father's face darkened with anger. "This is exactly the problem. You cannot even give your family your full attention for one evening." I stepped away from the circle of chairs, turning slightly toward the bookcase. "Madison, I am in the middle of something. Can this wait?" Her voice came through, excited and breathless. "Ms. Kara, I would not interrupt if it was not urgent. MedTech Solutions just made an acquisition offer. They value HealthSync at $100 million. Our stock just hit $100 million. The team is popping champagne. When can you get back to the office?" The room spun slightly as the numbers registered. $100 million. After years of struggle, ridicule, and doubt, HealthSync was worth $100 million. I turned back to face my family, who were all watching me with various expressions of annoyance and disapproval. The room had gone silent. "Thank you, Madison," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Tell the team I will call back in 20 minutes to discuss." I ended the call and slipped the phone into my pocket. For a moment, I simply stood there, looking at each family member in turn. These people who had dismissed me, belittled my dreams, and were now cutting me off completely. And in the very moment they thought they were exercising ultimate control over me, the universe had delivered the most perfect response. "That was my operations director," I said calmly. "MedTech Solutions has just valued HealthSync at $100 million. My father's face went completely blank. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. Rebecca's jaw literally dropped. Only Andrew showed a hint of a smile. "I appreciate the clarity of your position," I continued, finding strength I did not know I possessed. "You are right that I chose a different path than the one laid out for me. The Thompson way was never my way. And now I see that was the greatest gift I could have given myself." I walked to my father's desk and picked up the documents he had prepared to formalize my financial excommunication. "I accept these terms. I do not need your money. I do not need your approval. And I especially do not need to be reminded constantly that I am a disappointment because I chose to create something of my own instead of simply inheriting something created by others." I turned to each of them, addressing them individually for perhaps the first time in my adult life. "Dad, I admire what you built with Thompson Financial, but I was never going to be happy there. Mom, I am sorry you feel I have torn the family apart, but I refuse to accept that blame. My choices were about my own fulfillment, not about rejecting you. Rebecca, Andrew, I hope someday you can publicly acknowledge me as I am, not as you wish I would be." I gathered my purse and stood tall, feeling a strange sense of liberation mixed with sadness. I will always be a Thompson by blood, but from tonight forward, I am building my own legacy on my own terms. With that, I walked out of the study, through the grand foyer, and out the heavy front door of the Thompson family mansion. As it closed behind me with a solid thud, I took my first breath as a truly independent woman, financially and emotionally. It felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The cool night air hit my face as I walked down the steps of my family home. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. Adrenaline, shock, vindication, and grief all coursed through me in equal measure. I had just walked away from everything familiar, everything secure, but I had also walked toward something entirely my own. I called an Uber and directed it to the HealthSync office. As we drove through Boston's nighttime streets, I called Madison back. "Tell me everything," I said, trying to process what was happening. Madison filled me in on the details. MedTech Solutions, one of the largest healthcare technology companies in the country, had been watching our growth for months. Their acquisition offer had come with a valuation of $100 million, along with promises to keep our team intact and our core mission centered. "The team is waiting for you," Madison said. "They want to celebrate with their founder." When I arrived at our office, the scene was surreal. Our normally subdued workspace had transformed into a celebration. The development team, the sales department, the customer service representatives, all mingling with champagne flutes in hand. These people had believed in HealthSync when almost no one else did, working long hours for modest salaries because they shared the vision. Michael spotted me first. My business partner crossed the room and enveloped me in a bear hug. "We did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Remember when we were working out of that tiny office with the leaky ceiling? Look at us now." For the next few hours, I let myself be swept up in the celebration, purposefully pushing thoughts of my family to the back of my mind. This moment belonged to HealthSync and the team that had built it from nothing. The following week was a whirlwind of meetings with Medteca's executive team and our lawyers. After careful consideration and lengthy discussions with Michael and our core team, I made the decision to decline the acquisition offer. Instead, We negotiated a strategic partnership that would give us access to Medteca's vast resources and distribution channels while allowing HealthSync to remain independent. They still value us at $100 million, I explained to the team when announcing the decision. But this way, we control our destiny. We keep building what we believe in. The partnership announcement made headlines in the tech and healthcare industries. HealthSync turns down acquisition to forge independent path, read the Boston Business Journal. Thomson disrupts healthcare communication with revolutionary platform, declared TechCrunch. My phone remained conspicuously silent from any Thomson family members. No congratulations. No acknowledgments, not even a text message questioning the accuracy of what I had told them that night. Their silence spoke volumes about their inability to process my success outside the narrow definition they had created for me. With the MedTech partnership infusing new capital into our company, HealthSync expanded rapidly. Within months, our team grew to 50 employees, and we moved into a proper headquarters in downtown Boston, complete with the exposed brick walls and open concept design that had once seemed like an unattainable dream. Madison, now officially our Chief Operations Officer, oversaw the transition flawlessly. Her loyalty through the lean years had earned her this position, and she embraced it with characteristic efficiency and vision. You should get a proper apartment now, she suggested one evening as we worked late. Something that actually reflects who you are, not who your parents thought you should be. She was right. I found a loft in South End. A space filled with light and possibilities, and furnished it exactly as I wanted. No family heirlooms, no Thompson-style formality, just clean modern lines and comfortable spaces that felt like me. The first time I encountered my family after that fateful night was at the annual Boston Children's Hospital Gala, a charity event that the Thompsons had supported for generations. I had purchased a table on behalf of HealthSync, our first official foray into the Boston philanthropy scene that had once been the exclusive domain of old money families like mine. I spotted them across the ballroom, my mother in her signature pearls, my father working the room with practiced charm. They saw me too. A flicker of recognition crossing their faces before they carefully turned away, pretending not to notice. Later, at the bar, Andrew approached me cautiously. "Congratulations on the MedTech partnership," he said, glancing over his shoulder to ensure our parents were not watching. The financial structure of the deal was brilliant. "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched by his acknowledgement. "How are things at Thompson Financial?" "The same," he admitted with a small sigh. "Though father has been unusually focused on tech sector investments lately. I think you might have influenced him more than he will admit." Rebecca found me next, cornering me in the ladies' room with an awkward attempt at reconciliation. "Your dress is beautiful," she began, clearly struggling. "And I saw your profile in Business Insider. The women in tech issue." "Thank you," I said again, unsure how much to trust this olive branch. "I was wrong." She finally blurted out. "About your company. About your choices. I just never had the courage to defy expectations the way you did." The interaction was brief but significant. For the first time, one of my siblings had openly admitted that my path had merit. The most surreal aspect of my new success was how it affected my parents' social circle. Men who had patronizingly patted my head at Thompson gatherings for years suddenly wanted introductions to venture capitalists I knew. Women who had clucked sympathetically to my mother about her wayward daughter now asked if I might speak to their daughters about entrepreneurship. Business schools began inviting me to give guest lectures. The Women's Business Association asked me to keynote their annual conference. Journalists requested interviews about breaking into the male-dominated tech world and defying family expectations to follow your passion. In a particularly ironic twist, my father's closest friend and golfing partner called me directly to ask if I would consider joining the board of his healthcare company. "We need innovative thinkers like you," he said, apparently forgetting the countless times he had dismissed my business ideas at family dinners. My mother made her first attempt at contact 3 months after the cutoff. She enlisted a mutual family friend to suggest lunch. "Eleanor misses you," Judith Campbell told me over the phone. "She may not agree with your choices, but you are still her daughter." I agreed to coffee, shorter and less formal than lunch. We met at a neutral cafe halfway between her world and mine. The conversation was strained, filled with careful pleasantries and strategic omissions. She did not mention my father or the cutoff, and I did not bring up HealthSync's success. As we parted, she squeezed my hand. Perhaps you could come for Christmas? Just think about it. It was a small step, but it represented a significant shift. For the first time, my mother was coming to me, acknowledging my separate existence outside the Thompson framework. Through it all, I was building something I had never had before. A support network based on genuine connection rather than obligation. The HealthSync team, particularly Madison and Michael, had become a kind of chosen family. Robert, our initial investor, had evolved into a trusted mentor. Stephanie remained my steadfast friend, celebrating every victory without jealousy or agenda. And for the first time in my adult life, I was not defining my worth through my family's eyes. The reflection I saw in the mirror each morning was finally, truly my own. 6 months after the night my family cut me off, HealthSync had expanded internationally, with pilot programs launching in hospitals across Canada and the UK. Our Boston headquarters hummed with energy as we prepared for our biggest product release yet, a comprehensive patient engagement platform that would revolutionize home care coordination. The professional success was gratifying, but the deeper work was happening internally. At Madison's gentle insistence, I had started seeing a therapist to process the complex emotions surrounding my family relationships. Success is the best revenge, but healing is the best resolution, Dr. Winters told me during one of our sessions. Your family's rejection was never about your inadequacy. It was about their inability to see beyond their own narrow definition of success. Those words struck a chord that resonated through my entire being. How many years had I spent trying to prove my worth to people who were fundamentally incapable of valuing what I offered? The realization was both painful and liberating. The first real breakthrough in family relations came unexpectedly. Rebecca called me on a random Tuesday afternoon, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I am having lunch near your office tomorrow, she said. Would you have time to meet? Over salads at a cafe near HealthSync headquarters. My normally composed sister broke down. I am miserable at Thompson Financial, she confessed, dabbing carefully at her eyes to preserve her makeup. I have always been miserable. I just never had the courage to admit it, not even to myself. For the first time, we had a genuine conversation as adults and equals, not as Thompson daughters playing our assigned roles. I listened as she shared her dreams of environmental law, a path she had abandoned to please our father. In turn, I told her honestly about the challenges and rewards of forging my own way. You make it look easy, she said with a sad smile. It has been anything but easy, I assured her. But it has been right for me. As we parted, she hugged me spontaneously, something the reserved Thompsons rarely did. I am proud of you, she whispered. I should have said that years ago. Andrew followed with his own outreach a few weeks later, asking if he could buy me coffee to pick my brain about innovation in traditional industries. What started as a thinly veiled business discussion quickly evolved into something more personal. Father asks about you, he admitted, stirring his latte absently. He reads every article about HealthSync, though he would never admit it. And Mother? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. She has your Business Insider cover framed in her private sitting room, Andrew said with a small smile. Behind her photography books where Father will not notice. These small revelations were like puzzle pieces, helping me construct a more nuanced picture of my family than the monolithic opposition I had imagined. They were flawed, stubborn, and set in their ways, but perhaps not as united or resolute in their rejection as they had appeared. The most unexpected development came in the form of an invitation delivered to my office, much like the one that had preceded the cutoff. This time, however, it was for a dinner at a restaurant rather than the Thompson home. Your father and I would appreciate your company. My mother's handwritten note read, the formal phrasing unable to disguise what was essentially an olive branch. I debated declining, the memory of that last family meeting still raw. But Dr. Winters encouraged me to go, with boundaries firmly in place. You are not the same person who sat in that study 6 months ago, she reminded me. You are engaging from a position of strength now, not dependency. The dinner was awkward but civil. My parents were clearly making an effort, though neither directly mentioned the cutoff or acknowledged their previous dismissal of HealthSync. My father asked carefully general questions about current projects, while my mother made observations about my appearance that were, for once, not entirely critical. As dessert was served, my father cleared his throat in the way that traditionally preceded important pronouncements. The Thompson Financial Board is considering diversifying into healthcare technology investments, he said, examining his water glass intensely. Your insights on the sector would be valuable. It was as close to an apology or acknowledgement as I was likely to get from Thomas Thompson III. Not a personal validation, but a professional one. I would be happy to provide some general industry guidance, I replied carefully. Though, of course, specific information about HealthSync would be proprietary. He nodded, the ghost of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. It was a small moment of connection, businessperson to businessperson, the language he best understood. As we prepared to leave, my mother touched my arm gently. Perhaps Sunday dinner next month, she suggested, if your schedule permits. I did not immediately accept or decline, instead promising to check my calendar. This was part of my new boundaries. Never again allowing family obligations to automatically supersede my own needs and priorities. Back at my loft that evening, I sat by the window overlooking Boston's twinkling skyline, reflecting on how much had changed in 6 months. The family that had once defined my entire existence was now just one aspect of a rich and complex life I had built for myself. HealthSync continued to thrive, but more importantly, I had developed a leadership style based on authenticity and collaboration rather than the hierarchical authority I had grown up with. Our company culture emphasized innovation, mutual support, and genuine respect, the antithesis of the competitive, critical environment of my childhood. I had begun mentoring young female entrepreneurs, particularly those struggling against family or societal expectations. Their determination reminded me of my own journey, and their gratitude when I shared my experiences was profoundly rewarding. The key is realizing that proving your worth to others is an endless, impossible task. I told a particularly bright startup founder after she shared her frustrations with dismissive investors. Build something you believe in, and the right people will recognize its value and yours. The truth I had discovered was both simple and profound. The approval I had sought from my family for so long could never have fulfilled me the way self-acceptance and authentic achievement had. My success was sweeter because I had defined it on my own terms. When I finally did attend another Thompson family dinner, 8 months after being cut off, the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. I was no longer the disappointing daughter seeking validation, but a successful entrepreneur choosing to spend time with her flawed but familiar family. My father still occasionally lapsed into lecturing mode. My mother still fretted about appearances. Rebecca and Andrew still navigated their own complex relationships with family expectations. But beneath the familiar patterns, something had changed. There was a new respect underlying their interactions with me, and more importantly, a new strength in how I engaged with them. I no longer needed them to understand or approve of my choices. I had proven to myself, the only audience that truly mattered, that I could build something meaningful on my own terms. Life continues to evolve, as does my relationship with my family. We may never have the warm, unconditionally supportive bond that exists in greeting card commercials, but we have reached a place of mutual respect that once seemed impossible. The greatest lesson from my journey was not about business success or family reconciliation, but about the freedom that comes from authoring your own story instead of following someone else's script. True success is not measured in dollars or status, but in the courage to pursue your own vision even when those closest to you cannot see it. Have you ever had to choose between meeting others' expectations and following your own path? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Was there a moment when you had to stand up for your dreams despite others' doubts? Hit that like button if this story resonated with you. And subscribe for more stories about finding strength through life's toughest challenges. Remember, Sometimes the people who are supposed to believe in you the most are the last ones to see your true potential. Thank you for listening to my story. And may you find the courage to build your own legacy, whatever that means for you.